Welcome to part two of our Vince McMahon rundown. Um, as as I stated in the first episode, I will continue to say it. This episode contains some sensitive topics, and uh, yeah, if you ever feel uncomfortable, don't have to listen to this one. Feel free to turn it off, and if you need help, you're struggling, please, there's help available. Yeah, so this is episode 3 and 4.
Sure is.
Andrew, what's up?
How much? This one here, though, episodes 3 and 4 of the Vince McMahon documentary, they are entitled "Business." It's business and attitude. So that
Yep.
was episode 4. In these episodes, we're going to be talking about obviously what happens in episodes 3 and 4. They talk basically the Wendy Richter screw job, which led to the infamous Bret Hart screw job in Montreal. We talked there about how the Monday Night Wars pretty much started with Hall and Nash, the curtain call that went on. We talk about Stone Cold Austin 316, the creation of the Mr. McMahon character, and how that influenced a lot of things. And we talk about how basically a lot of things were taken back and forth between Bischoff and Vince, and how Vince claims Bischoff stole some things, and how Bischoff.
I really like how they had Bischoff on here.
Yeah, and how Bischoff basically said, "Well, you just basically took things, did the same thing that I did, just changed it." So, we also have an admission from Eric Bischoff how he believes it was inevitable that Vince was going to win. But we're going to start off though first here. Enough of the pitter patter though. Let's just get out of this one. Anyway, Wendy Richter. We'll start off with that. Wendy Richter, which led to the Montreal screw job, because that's pretty much how this whole Monday Night Wars, I mean, kind of started. Not really,
No,
started, but
no.
it
This was very much a precursor to one of the catalyst angles that people point to.
Yeah.
For the Attitude Era.
Yeah, it already started. Hogan was already in WCW at this point.
What, the Richter thing?
No, well, Hogan, like as far as the Monday Wars go, Hogan was already in it. But
yeah, okay. We'll get to that in a second. We got to go back about 8 years prior.
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of that.
Yeah. So Wendy Richter was kind of the first one to push back about losing a belt, and to which again, Vince reiterated, like, look, this is essentially a prop.
Yeah.
It's my title. I'm just letting you hold it.
He's not really wrong when you think about it. He's not.
No, he's not. And that's the thing. It's all like he's trying to create a show.
Yeah.
He's like he has a script that he wants to follow.
Yeah.
And when people try and deviate from that, like, then sometimes you got to take matters into your own hands.
Yeah.
So basically, he dresses up Fabulous Moolah, and this is the only sighting of Fabulous Moolah on this whole documentary.
Yeah. Literally the only sighting.
Where she dresses up as like the Spider Lady or something like that.
Something along those lines, yeah.
And even they had Wendy Richter on the documentary talking about it as well. So basically what happened was there was a show at MSG, and very quickly into the match, Moolah puts Richter in a small cradle and the ref just counts 3.
Yeah.
Richter's shoulders were up, but it didn't matter.
No, it didn't.
But then Richter left the building and wasn't seen again until she was put into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But we talk about this because for guys like us, like, I mean, even me, like, I'm 32 as of this recording.
Yes.
I'll be 33 in a couple of weeks, but I had no idea. The first kind of hint at anything like this happening was the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah.
And I was completely oblivious to the fact that this had happened about 10 years prior, um, with Wendy Richter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, business is business.
Yeah.
Um, Also, they touch on the end of the steroid trial and Hogan going to WCW.
Yeah. They also touched, yeah, like when Hogan went to WCW and the steroid trial was going on, Hogan was the key witness to everything. He very well could
He
have,
screwed the feds.
he's 100% he did. He basically said to Vince McMahon, forever, no matter what, and
Got your back.
got your back. And he literally did. He went in
Yep.
there, like, and to be honest, you, he's, it's kind of hard to sit there and say Vince never sold him steroids. Vince fucking flat out said, I bought steroids and I used them myself. He flat out,
So, and here's the thing too, is like they openly have discourse about this. Like this shouldn't have gone to trial anyway. They didn't have enough evidence.
no, they didn't have enough evidence to really just because they said that Vince was distributing the steroids. They
Yeah.
distributed anything. The doctor did. I mean, they're not
So,
wrong.
so also, during the trial, Meltzer talks about Vince going to have neck surgery, which really wasn't necessary at the time,
No,
but he needed it.
yeah, it had to be done. It just wasn't necessary at the point in time.
Right. So Vince had neck surgery, which is why those old photos and footage of the steroid trial, you'll see Vince in a neck brace.
Yeah,
And a lot of people thought like it was, to gain sympathy.
yeah.
Um, but eventually Vince was found not guilty.
Yeah.
Um, which basically once the steroid trial was done, then that's kind of when we hit the ground running with um
Well,
kind of the the beginning of WCW's ascend.
yeah. Eric Bischoff was on this episode a lot,
Hmm.
and Bischoff talks about how went with Ted Turner. Ted wanted to win. Vince kind of took it as the whole thing where Ted Turner was trying to put him out of business and all those things there. Eric kind of just wanted life to be. He wanted to compete with Monday Night Raw. He wanted to compete. He wanted to beat Mr. McMahon. I don't know if it was put him out of business was ever really like a true intention, but he wanted to compete and have a better
I
show.
believe I believe the sentiment was like he just wanted to be on their level,
Yeah,
and if they went out of business in the process, so be it.
yeah. I don't think the intent was ever to really put them out of business. I don't think that was ever sure Bischoff's ever intent.
So
That's not good
they
for
kind
him. We saw what happened when WCW folded and there was nothing else. We saw what happened with that, right?
which they do cover towards the end of episode 4, I believe.
Yeah, towards the episode four, kind of being a five.
So
Uh, but anyway, Hall and Nash defect due to a lot of
not so much defect. And again,
this is where the human part came in.
right. So I've listened to both Scott and Kevin talk very candidly about this.
Yeah, Kevin's never held back and never said Kevin's always said he wanted to stay in WWE.
Right. But Vince couldn't offer
The
the
mo-
less dates and the money.
yeah,
And then so they talk about the curtain call
yeah.
and they talk about how they got permission to do this from
Vince okayed
Vince.
it.
Yeah. But I don't think they counted on a fan recording it.
No, I mean at that point in time there too, as far as like
Camcorder.
recording stuff goes, as on your phone and stuff like that goes, that was almost for the most part non-existent.
I don't think people thought that was possible yet.
Yeah, it was
but
like it was non-existent for the most part. Like,
it was on a camcorder,
yeah,
which I used one as a kid. I don't know about you.
we all did.
Um, so this is 96,
Yeah,
and Nitro had already been around for about 6 months at this point.
yeah. Luger showed up
And
on
so
show.
they start talking about the talent raid
Yeah,
of late 95 and early 96.
Luger specifically was the first one to really defect.
So, but that's the thing because Vince was working on a bunch of handshake deals at the time.
Yeah, that was before wait for guaranteed contracts, wait for anything. It was
And he,
all
yeah,
by Vince, and they worked quite well for years.
so they eventually get into the lengths that Vince went to keep Bret Hart,
Yeah,
including signing him to a 20-year deal.
yeah, like they focused Brett as the leader of the new generation. That's kind of where it started. The focus was both Brett was the leader, and obviously you had Shawn there, and but Undertaker was there, and all sorts of other things. But Brett was considered
Diesel,
for the most part leader.
Diesel, Waltman,
Yep,
Hall.
they were all the leaders of the new that new generation of WWE. Um, so Brett at one point got at the time a large contract, which Vince
Yeah.
immediately realized after he signed Brett that he couldn't do it.
So, okay. So the nucleus of like we'll get to the screw job in a second
Yeah. Well,
because that's where this is leading.
we're going to talk Brett too, because Brett, he said he's very candid in this, basically on a documentary as well.
Yeah, so I think one of the most striking things he says, I forget which episode it is like, he has a lot of love for Vince, but he's been let down by Vince very many times by his lies.
He does, and he also said too the day the whole curtain call happened, it kind of killed wrestling. I mean, look, eventually it was
That
going to
that's
happen,
open that's open to interpretation.
and to be honest, I think eventually, through this day and age nowadays, how everything is more open and all that stuff, it would have happened eventually anyway. When you think about it,
Well, so that's the thing, right? Is like I'll still get comments from people of like, "Oh, like that fake shit?" Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
But it's like um they do discuss like kind of the beginning of the Attitude Era in episode 4, but here's the thing. If
yeah,
you ask me, most people will point to the Montreal Screwjob. If you play through the Attitude Era thing they did for WWE 13,
yeah.
they would put the beginning of the Attitude Era as SummerSlam 97 where Brett beat the Undertaker. But I would say WrestleMania 13 is the start of what would become the Attitude Era.
WrestleMania 13. Now, if I'm correct, that was Undertaker with the
That's
title,
Sid and Taker on top,
Stone Cold,
Stone
Steve
Cold and
Austin
Brett
versus
in the
Bret Hart,
submission match. Yeah.
and the I Quit match. That, do you think about it there, that's when Brett turned heel. That's pretty much one of the things that really set off Stone Cold. Now, but obviously, previous before that, with the curtain call, so a lot of stuff led because we're at this point here, but a lot of people seem to forget too. Stone Cold is already established as Austin 316. There's more and more people for it, but King of the Ring was before that. And
I've said this on prior episodes too when we bring up Boston.
yeah,
Okay. Never mind this revisionist history of he cuts that promo and then immediately is a superstar.
no, he wasn't. There was
No.
signs for it.
No, you knew he was going to be a major player.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If the curtain call doesn't happen, we don't get that promo
No, we don't. Like, because they was set for Triple
because
H to win.
Triple H was going to win the 96 Royal Rumble. or King of the Ring. Instead, he won the 97.
Yeah, he was supposed to win that ring there too. If that didn't happen, Triple H never would have eaten crap, as Triple H has put it before, Vince's words, and Triple H has never forgot that. Keep that in mind.
I know.
It's never differed from Paul Levesque's mouth from what Vince said to him. It's never differed, which is quite amazing.
So
Uh,
with WCW offering more money and less dates,
yeah,
a lot of guys started coming over. Hogan, Savage, Hall, Nash, but even some like low tier guys too, like your Big Boss Man, IRS,
yeah,
DiBiase, Waltman.
yeah. They,
They all start coming over in 96, late 96.
yeah, and Vince was getting really upset with WCW because they were doing it, which was funny because Vince comes off as a giant hypocrite because he did the exact same thing in the territories. And even Bischoff mentioned that too in the whole thing.
Not just that, but the interviewer himself kind of questions Vince on this, where it's like, do you not see a similarity
Yeah,
in, you know? And then that's when Vince kind of goes to like you know, I don't fight fair, I fight to win.
yeah.
But it kind of hurts when someone does it to me.
Well, yeah. It
So,
it's like it's one of those things that happen. But like it was funny though too. Like they mentioned Hogan because Hogan would start the NWO with the whole NWO stuff at Bash the Beach. It never occurred to Vince to turn Hogan heel.
no. Even though, and even by Hogan's own words, and there's video footage of this,
Oh yeah, for sure.
he started as a heel in AWA.
He was a complete utter heel. Like he was a huge heel. He was his heel character was basically in Rocky 3 was based on the character he was already playing in wrestling at the time.
In AWA, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Literally,
And,
just not named Thunderlips.
no, he wasn't named Thunderlips.
So like
But
it's not like he was never a heel.
right, so they get into this, and then WCW explodes.
Exactly.
And so,
Well, it's funny too because during that whole thing too, Vince started doing the whole Ted Turner spoofs, which they never should have done.
and it got to a point where even USA Network, they had USA executives on this documentary.
Yeah, saying they should have done.
USA was like, you got to stop doing this because, like, that's still my friend you're talking about.
Yeah. So,
And
bad mojo.
right. So, anyways, and it's funny, they also show there's certain times during this documentary where they use footage from WWE TV to contradict stuff that Vince was saying.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about how the NWO was beating up people with baseball bats and stuff like that, right? And he's like, yeah, like we did some serious stuff, but it's like it's not like, we used weapons really.
No.
And then cue the B-roll of the Pillman's got a gun thing,
Yeah.
or cue the B-roll of Kaientai trying to chop off Val Venus's dick.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
But
But
during that point in time, though, too, WWE was very close to going out of business. It wasn't one of those things where, like, I mean, this isn't a myth. This wasn't like they're just making this up.
yeah,
It was legitimate that they were going out of business because of all the things that were going on.
yep. And so then this is when Vince tells Brett he can't afford to pay him and gives Brett like kind of like a negotiation window with WCW.
Well, he kind of gave him, he said he looked in the contract,
Showed him a loophole.
that Vince can get out of it with free and clear, and Brett can go do what he needs to do. And that's when he just got a good contract from WCW. All they did really nothing with Brett. I mean, his WCW career was kind of like decent, but it wasn't nowhere close to his WWE what he did.
Well, exactly, but that also is not the same Bret Hart
No,
either.
No, a lot of stuff happened
Um,
over that time.
so so here's the thing. Now we'll get into the screw job.
Yeah,
We're into November.
hard.
Oh, so Brett wins the title at SummerSlam,
Yeah,
and and Shawn had just beat Undertaker in the first Hell in a Cell match
yeah,
to become number one contender.
yeah,
And that match is going to happen at Survivor Series. Then all of this other stuff about contracts come up.
yeah,
Now, if you saw Wrestling with Shadows,
yeah. I remember that.
okay,
Yeah,
if you saw Wrestling with Shadows, then you'll remember like Brett very clearly, and he has said this in even in there's a sit down DVD that I own
I remember that. Yeah, I think
with
I
Brett and Sean.
think I have it actually on DVD.
Yeah, I have it. I
Yeah,
just saw it in a moving box, but um, so Brett and Sean were kind of like at an all time high when
yeah.
it come when it came to how bad their relationship was.
Yeah, to put a little context behind it too, Brett and Shawn were very good friends up until that point.
96.
Yeah, they were very good friends. They worked with each other an awful lot. Like they're both kind of for the most part consummate professionals. They just didn't like each other. Their stuff with Sunny Days and all that crap there. Like
Well,
there's
that was during this buildup.
yeah, and Shawn has openly admitted now their relationship is much better now than it ever was. I think at times Brett needs to maybe calm down a little some of the crap, but
If you want the best comprehension piece for the Montreal Screwjob, there's two things you need to search out.
yeah,
There's Wrestling with Shadows,
yeah,
and there's the Brett versus Shawn WWE produced DVD
yeah.
that Jim Ross interviews both of them. It came out in like 2010, 2011,
I remember it too.
just after Brett came back.
Yeah, and look, Shaw's openly admitted he was a pain in the ass back then. Everyone knows it.
Hmm.
Like everyone knows it. And Shaw's never shied away from it now since. He's not never once said, no, that never happened. No, he admits that he was a piece of crap.
Yeah, so Brett, when this whole thing came up, Vince was worried about his title.
Because and to be honest, you're rightfully so for the most
Just justifiably so. Okay.
like he saw a few months before that, maybe even a year before that, Medusa, formerly Alundra Blaze, dumped the women's world title in the garbage live on Nitro. So yeah, I can understand where he was coming from.
Yeah, me too. And so Brett had two conditions.
Yeah,
He didn't want to do it in Canada. He didn't want to drop the title in Canada,
yeah.
and he didn't want to drop it to Shawn.
No, because of the way Shawn was at that point in time.
And he suggested, and this is coming from the Wrestling with Shadows documentary. Brett suggested the next night they were doing Detroit
Yeah,
for Raw,
yeah, I remember that.
and he suggested um, dropping it to Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, he would, or yes, he was suggested dropping the next day to either a Shamrock, and even I think he even mentioned too about just dropping the title in general, than just them doing a tournament. Like,
Well, yeah, even so, but
yeah,
he did not want to do the favors for Shawn.
because Shawn apparently in the
And
past said he wouldn't drop the title
it
to him.
stems from a conversation that they had about 6 weeks prior where Brett tried to kind of clear the air,
Yep.
and he says to Shawn, um,
I have no problem dropping the title to you.
he's like, I have no problem doing the
To
like when the time comes, I have no problem putting you over when it comes down to it. But Shawn's rebuttal to that was, that's fine because I wouldn't do the same for you.
yeah, that's kind of where, and
Yeah.
Shawn has kind of said too over time, he was so drugged up on a lot of crap at the point in time, he doesn't recall saying that. Now, whether or not that was said or not, it's hearsay.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. There's no real evidence. It's coming from Brett and it's coming from Shawn. And if Shawn was as big of a drug addict as he says he was at that point in time, it's a good possibility he doesn't remember.
No, no, and that's fine.
So
What I'm saying is, so you have this kind of powder keg about to explode in Montreal.
yeah,
And I guess the week before, there was a three-way call between Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Vince.
yeah,
And that's where, you hear the infamous line from Triple H of, screw him. If he's not going to do business, then we'll do it for him.
yeah,
And so they had planned out this finish where um, Sean was going to put Brett in the sharpshooter,
yeah,
and Brett was going to reverse it into one of his own,
yeah.
and they were going to do some like schmoz finish after that.
Yeah, something kind of weird, which was funny
But
too, because I was watching the documentary and Brett openly said there while Sean was putting it on him, he actually told Sean he had it in on wrong, and Sean like, oh okay, and like they really
yeah,
it was.
so
I mean, to be honest, yeah, Brett's kind of caught, I guess, consummate professional for the most part in the ring.
Brett
What's
has used the
outside?
term Brett has used the term of he gave Sean the loaded gun.
Sure.
And Sean turns Brett over for the sharpshooter, and Brett even says in this documentary,
Yeah.
like, it's a really good match up to the finish.
Yeah, he actually says the match is very well done. And to be honest, it actually was up until that point.
So, anyways, the finish happened the way everyone knows it happened.
Yep.
Brett, that's why Brett looks so confused after the bell rings, because he was in the middle of reversing it into his own sharpshooter.
Yeah, it was never supposed to happen that way, and that's where it kind of got.
So, anyways, then they go into the aftermath of that where, you know, there's two different versions of this told in this documentary.
Yeah, I found the one very comical part about it was when like he hung
There's
that loogie into Vince's eye, and Vince could never figure out how he actually did that.
so there's Vince's version where he went into the locker room and gave Brett one free shot.
Yeah,
And then there's everyone else's version, including the Undertaker's account, where he said there were so many people in between the two that he has no idea how a punch got through.
yeah. Undertaker even went on record saying he was very upset with at that point in time too. What was going on? Like he was because Vince was Undertaker's very much the old school mentality. He came up in the
Mhm.
older territory days. That's kind of how it was. So I understand that like it's very conflicted. I mean, to be honest, there's probably only two people who really know what truly happened that night and how everything was out, and that's probably just Brett and Vince.
Well, no, because there's other people in the room,
Yeah,
right?
but Vince,
So you
Vince
kind of
definitely got
take
clocked.
you kind of take the most frequently used account of the story,
Yeah.
which there was a bunch of people in between them, and somehow Brett got a shot through.
Apparently, Brett. Well, yeah, he did. The one thing is for sure that Brett clocked him.
Yep.
That is the one definitive only thing that's the whole extent true is that Brett clocked him.
But anyway, so they use this to kind of turn Vince into a TV character,
Yeah, Vince
which
says something
kind
very,
of which launches the Attitude Era.
and that goes right into episode 4. Good
And
job, good segue.
yeah, so I don't I don't need to really cover a lot of the early stuff they talk about. The main thing I want to talk about from episode 4 is Owen Hart.
This is kind of where we're going to talk Owen Hart here too. But
Is there something you want to cover from that?
yeah, so we're gonna talk about like the attitude stuff here. So obviously with the attitude stuff here, we have the whole Bret Hart, we have the whole Austin 316,
Hmm.
right? This is also the recreation of the Vince McMahon character, as you alluded to. This is basically, as Stone Cold said in the documentary. Vince, this is as Austin has said before in his thing. Stone Cold Steve Austin is Steve turned up to 10.
Hmm.
Austin said McMahon's Mr. McMahon character is Vince turned up to 10 in a sense.
Yeah.
So really everyone sees Mr. McMahon as really as this, you know, character, right? Even though Vince says this is start where you start seeing the difference where you almost can't tell the difference between which is Vince McMahon the character, or is it really just Vince?
So they also talk about um
They talk about how
so Bischoff basically admits like Vince took everything that WCW was doing in 96 and did it better.
yes, Vince Bischoff basically says DX was their answer to what WCW is doing with NWO.
Yep.
Also, Mr. McMahon was
Eric Bischoff.
Eric Bischoff. So they really ripped off both of each other. And to be honest, that's been going on in wrestling for years at this point. It's been going on for years in wrestling. No difference with it. Bischoff, the one thing I like to know too of Bischoff, and Bischoff even said this too. In his eyes, when he looks back on everything, it was inevitable that the WWE was going to defeat WCW. In the end, that was really what was going to happen. Unfortunately, so, and that's fine. But in that whole time period, during the whole attitude era, you see Vince starts creating new stars. Whereas WCW was bringing in people